All right, so getting on the subject of Spanish-speaking people, what kinds of crimes have you dealt with, in your practice over the years? And are there any that are becoming more prevalent or are prevalent?
A lot of the cases that I see is in regards to people that are immigrants or maybe in some sort of status regarding their driver's license. The rules changed quite a few years ago, especially after September 11. There was people here that may have been on some sort of visa or maybe here illegally or whatever the case may be, but they may have had a driver's license at some point, and then the rules change and they're not allowed to have, some people are not allowed to have driver's licenses. So oftentimes a lot of the kinds of cases that I get is people driving without a valid driver's license or driving with a license that's expired or something like that. And those are the people that I tend to see that they're going through the immigration process, and it's just slow to get to where they need to be. So that's something where the system has unfortunately not allowed those people that may have had a driver's license initially, not allowing them to renew, and that does affect people quite a bit, especially in Central Florida where the public transit system is not, as it would be like in Washington or New York or something like that. People, really do need cars around here. And, there is, of course, bus systems, stuff like that, but it's not quite as prevalent or user-friendly as some of the other, big metropolitan cities.
So that's throwing a big wrench into the works for people that people that used to drive and need to get to work, people that are in different stages of immigration. Okay, I hear what you're saying.
Right.
Is there a particular story that you hear from the clients that come in to see you? Are there any generalities that you tend to hear a lot?
Usually one of the things with criminal law is people just want you to make it better. And it's one of those things that in general, the vast majority of clients that I've had are people that have either, made some sort of mistake, or, maybe completely innocent of the charges, or maybe a repeat offender. I mean, I really get the kind of wide gamut of situations. But in general, almost all of my clients, except for maybe a small handful, are people that are wanting to cooperate and wanting to just, make the situation better. So like I started out saying, being a former prosecutor, I know what it takes for the state to prove a particular case, which is an advantage because I can look and see, do they have those things or are they missing them? So somebody may be telling me, privately that they may be guilty of the particular case, but if the state doesn't have what's necessary to prove, then that's the kind of case that I would still continue to push towards trial to hopefully either get it dropped or, get an acquittal at trial or something like that. But generally it's people that want, somebody to have a fair evaluation of their case, push the state to make sure that they have the things that are necessary. And if it does look like the state has things that are necessary, or if it's a situation of just trying to get the best possible fair deal, then that's certainly what we're pushing for and what I particularly push for. I pride myself on looking at cases in a very straightforward, honest, ethical way, and then trying to resolve it the best way possible, whatever the circumstances may be.
And how does a person's emotions, how do you notice that they change from, let's say, the first time they sit with you to as you go through the case, and do you have to deal with essentially helping people manage their emotions or managing their, what's going on with them mentally as you help them on a case?
Sure. There's some of that. I mean, obviously there's a human element to all of this, and I think that's something that I'm good at is giving people a very fair view as to what their case may look like. And that's why somebody always wants to hire an attorney. Like for me, not that this would happen, but attorneys don't even really want to represent themselves if they ever got into trouble, because you want to have somebody that's a third party that can give you an unbiased view of the case. So certainly I do listen to people, and I do try to kind of calm their nerves. I try to give them information, which is something that is a scary process at the beginning, Oftentimes, if somebody's been there, it's their first time being arrested. They don't know what to expect. They don't know what court's going to be like. They don't know what the judge is going to say. They don't know a lot of things. And so what I try to do is to try to take them through the process and explain to them, how things are going. And oftentimes that's a big comfort to people, is just knowing what to expect, what's kind of a realistic worst case scenario, what's realistically a best case scenario. And usually
Right.
when I get to that point and explain things to people, oftentimes nerves are kind of calmed down, and it's an easier way to kind of get through this whole process with them.
Okay. And when people come to you, obviously they're thinking that they have the option of going with a public defender or trying to defend themselves. So what would you say are the pros and cons? I mean, you've spoken about the pros of hiring a private lawyer, but can you say more about using a public defender or defending yourself? What's your opinion on that?
Well, kind of tagging on what I was just talking about in terms of representing yourself, it's always a bad idea to represent yourself. Number one, you're assuming you're not a lawyer. You don't know the ins and outs of how a courtroom is run, how the evidence will go. You're against a prosecutor who has gone to law school, who has passed the bar exam, and who has, anywhere from 0 years under their belt to 30 years under their belt. So it's never a good idea to represent yourself in a criminal case. In terms of a public defender, there are some public defenders that are good, but all public defenders are drastically overworked and underpaid. So it's a situation that as a private attorney, I have the time to be able to sit down with my clients and go over the cases with them, listen to what they have to say. I'm very free with giving people my phone number so that they can call me at, whatever hour that they need to, even after hours, and discussing cases with them. Public defenders in general are so overworked and they're in court so much that they don't really have the time to be able to devote themselves to the cases. And oftentimes people just want to be heard in general, and to make sure that somebody understands what their position is and to explain the process to them. And oftentimes, unfortunately, the public defenders don't have the resources or the time to be able to accomplish that. So that is also an advantage for hiring a private attorney, and especially me, is that you're going to have access to me pretty much at any point. We can set up conferences inside the office. You can call me on the phone. It's something that I'm very accessible to people, where a public defender may not be quite so accessible. And the other thing is, too, different from a civil law firms will do what's called billable hours, which anytime you pick up the phone to call that attorney, they're charging you. On criminal defense cases, we basically do it by retainer. Whatever the amount is what it is, and so you have access to the criminal attorney to ask whatever questions, make sure you feel comfortable with the process without having to be worried about being nickeled and dimed every time you pick up the phone.
That's good to know, yeah, because I'm sure a person would be afraid to call their attorney, feel like they're bothering them or feel like they're spending more money. So that's very good to know that once they pay, not to harass you, but they can call you with questions and things they need as they come up along the trial or along the case.
Of course. Yeah, I mean, me specifically, I look at myself as kind of an advisor. Like I'm helping them make the decision. Ultimately, things like whether to go to trial or whether to take a plea or something like that, those are decisions that the client purely needs to make themselves. But, of course, an attorney can advise them what they think is their best options, whether it's to push it to trial or whether it's to try to take a plea or negotiate the case, or those are the kinds of things that we can help with.
Okay. And this is probably an impossible question, but I have to ask anyway. What level of success have you had in helping people, getting charges reduced possibly, or fines, or jail time, or, the whole process and mitigating it? What kind of success have you had amongst all your cases?
I think it's a difficult thing to quantify that, but I pride myself that I get very, very good results on my cases. And again, it kind of boils down to experience. It's one of those things that I've been doing this for a long time. I've worked both sides of the fence. I know what's an appropriate offer and what is not. I know what an appropriate charge is and what is not. You know, when a case is trumped up and maybe somebody's charged with things that are much higher than they need to be, that's the advantage of hiring someone like me who has all of those elements. Former prosecutor, this is what I've been solely doing for 13 years. We don't do family law, we don't do other kinds of cases, we do criminal defense, and I'm board certified in this area. So I pride myself on being an expert in it. And I honestly, in looking back on all the cases that I've had as a defense attorney, I really can't think of any particular case at all that I felt like I was railroaded or got a bad result on, or somebody got more than what I thought that they would be. I've had a very high success rate with really all of my cases. I can't give you a particular number as to how many were dropped or reduced or anything like that. 'Cause at the same time, it's, you know, we got to deal with what we have. You know, you got to deal with the evidence. You got to deal with the witnesses. You know, cases are dropped for a variety of different reasons. But certainly, I look at my cases very closely, and I feel like I come up with very appropriate results.
And so both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney, in ballpark, how many cases have you worked on in some capacity or seen?
Gosh, I really, tens of thousands. I mean, I really can't even give a particular number. Certainly as a prosecutor, you're juggling, you know, hundreds of cases at a time. Defense attorney, you have, you know, fewer, obviously, and have more time to be able to devote to those kinds of cases. But, I mean, it has to be in the realm of tens of thousands, if not more. I mean, I've just dealt with a lot of cases. I mean, I don't even know if there's a way to figure it out.
Yeah, that's a lot of experience. Okay, that's good to know. That's a lot. I guess as a closing question, is there a personal statement you'd like to make to potential clients that are listening to you in this interview, or they're reading what you have to say?
I think that you'd be in good hands with at least coming to talk to me about your case. I give honest assessments as to looking at the case, looking at police reports, and I pride myself both as a prosecutor and as a defense attorney with being straightforward to people. I'm not a kind of attorney that plays hide the ball. I don't try to give people unrealistic expectations as to a case. I try to give a straightforward, realistic, ethical view on it, and I think that is an advantage so that people know realistically what they're facing. You know, some attorneys that somebody may go talk to may try to scare them, you know, that things are a lot worse than what they are, or they may try to sweet talk them and be like, you know, things are a lot better than what they really are. So it's one of those things of you kind of want to have a realistic viewpoint, and I think that's something that me and my law firm can provide for people.
Okay, very good. Well, thanks for taking the time to do the interview and answer the questions, and it's been very good to speak with you.
Great. Thank you so much.